In the heart of Victorian London, in 1851, a structure arose that defied every conventional architectural rule of its age. It was the Crystal Palace, a colossal, luminous marvel of iron and glass, so vast it enclosed ancient elm trees within its central transept. Designed by Joseph Paxton, a gardener with no formal architectural training, it was built in just 9 months for the Great Exhibition, a showcase of the industrial world's genius. This building was the ultimate symbol of modernity, modular, prefabricated, and entirely transparent, embodying the Victorian belief in progress and technological perfection. Its architecture was a radical departure from stone and timber, embracing the new materials of the Industrial Revolution. It was, quite literally, a shining, transient utopia, an architectural celebration that tragically became a colossal, unforgettable bonfire.
The Crystal Palace survived the Great Exhibition, was dismantled, moved, and rebuilt in South London, where it served as a permanent public park and cultural center for over 80 years. It endured world wars and economic shifts. Yet, on the cold night of November 30, 1936, the seemingly indestructible glass giant met its dramatic final end. A fire, possibly starting in the manager's office, rapidly engulfed the entire structure. The flames were visible for 100 miles, casting a dramatic, terrifying glow over the capital. The sheer speed of the architectural collapse, from intact structure to a ruined, molten framework in a few hours, was astonishing. This episode explores the groundbreaking modular design that made the palace possible, and the vulnerability of glass and iron when confronted with a catastrophic, prescribed level of heat.
Welcome back to Vanished Grandeur, where we uncover the stories of structures whose sudden disappearance left an indelible mark on history. The Crystal Palace is a monument to speed and efficiency. Joseph Paxton, the architect, was inspired by the structure of the Victoria Amazonica water lily, whose leaves possess an incredibly strong, ribbed architectural support system. His design was ingenious. Thousands of identical prefabricated cast iron ribs and almost 300,000 panes of mass-produced glass were assembled like a giant, elegant kit. This modular construction made it a pioneering example of prefabricated architecture, setting the stage for modern steel and glass skyscrapers. The palace was, in essence, a giant greenhouse elevated to monumental civic status, a revolutionary architectural form that was forbidden from continued existence by the destructive power of fire.
The palace was built with the specific, temporary purpose of housing the 1851 Great Exhibition of the Works of Industry of all nations. Prince Albert championed the project, seeing it as a symbol of Britain's industrial supremacy and global reach. The rapid timeline for its construction, just over 9 months, demanded its modularity. The palace, originally erected in Hyde Park, was a functional architectural marvel designed to maximize light for displaying machinery and goods. Its temporary nature, however, ironically contributed to its initial salvation. The original agreement required it to be dismantled. It was the decision to move and rebuild it in the Sydenham area of South London that gave the structure its 80 years of second life, making its eventual loss even more tragic for the generations who came to view it as a permanent landmark.
Paxton's genius lay in standardization. The entire building was designed around a 24-foot module, the largest size of glass sheet available at the time. This standardization allowed all parts, columns, girders, and panels to be mass-produced off-site and assembled with minimal skilled labor. The assembly process itself was innovative, involving special wheeled scaffolding that moved along the structure's gutters. This industrial-scale efficiency was an architectural revolution, demonstrating that beauty and grandeur could be achieved through repetition and standardization, a philosophy that deeply influenced later architects like Mies van der Rohe and the entire skyscraper movement. The palace was a prototype for the modern assembly line in architecture.
The primary architectural feature was the glass skin. The sheer transparency created an interior space unlike any seen before. Natural light flooded the exhibition halls, creating a bright, ethereal atmosphere that showcased the industrial exhibits without the need for complex internal lighting. The palace was essentially a controlled environment, a winter garden on a titanic scale. The continuous glass sheeting demanded an innovative glazing system, which Paxton solved with a simple groove and putty method, perfected by a team of glazers known as Paxton's Flying Squad. This delicate architectural reliance on glass, which gave the structure its beauty, also ultimately doomed it when faced with intense, prolonged heat.
After the 1851 exhibition, the palace was acquired by a private company, dismantled piece by piece, and moved to Sydenham Hill in 1852. The new site was magnificent, overlooking London. The architect's vision for the rebuilt structure was even grander. The new version was taller, with new, imposing water towers and an increased reliance on heavy structural iron. This relocation and re-engineering proved the architectural flexibility of the modular system. It was transformed from a temporary exhibition hall into a permanent cultural complex, housing concerts, educational exhibits, and vast water fountains, a monument of permanent cultural instruction built upon a temporary architectural foundation.
In its second life in Sydenham, the Crystal Palace became one of London's most important cultural and social architectural centers. It hosted early FA Cup finals, massive choral festivals, and served as the site for groundbreaking educational displays, including casts of famous sculptures and historical architectural courts. The palace was no longer just about industry. It was a democratic palace for the people, an accessible place of leisure and learning. This continued function cemented its place in the public imagination, making its eventual destruction a shared cultural trauma that spanned generations of Londoners who had grown up with the glass giant as part of their skyline.
The fire began late in the evening. Witnesses claim it started in a small room near the central transept, possibly a storeroom or manager's office, and rapidly spread out of control. The very features that made the palace a masterpiece, the vast, open, continuous internal spaces, and the huge quantities of timber used in the flooring, internal decorative structures, and exhibits, acted as conduits for the flames. The iron frame, while non-combustible, quickly reached temperatures where it lost its structural integrity and buckled. The glass panes shattered explosively, feeding oxygen to the fire and spreading molten iron, accelerating the architectural collapse.
The fire was an unparalleled spectacle of destruction. Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin called the fire a great national tragedy. The glow lit up the entire night sky. The sheer speed of the architectural demise, consuming a structure the size of a small town in hours, symbolized the vulnerability of even the most technologically advanced constructions when faced with uncontrolled elemental force. The palace, designed for light and openness, ended its life as a roaring inferno, an unplanned, terrifying architectural light show that was tragically forbidden from being saved by the limitations of 1930s firefighting technology. Its destruction was total. Nothing was left but the basement foundations and the two flanking water towers.
The exact cause of the 1936 fire was never definitively proven, though the official verdict pointed toward an electrical fault or a carelessly discarded cigarette. The complete destruction left little forensic evidence to investigate. However, the subsequent public inquiry highlighted the architectural vulnerabilities. The palace had poor internal fire compartmentalization, a common flaw in large, open exhibition spaces, and its vast scale meant that firefighting efforts were overwhelmed almost instantly. The loss of the Crystal Palace served as a critical lesson in modern architectural design and fire safety standards. proving that open-plan structures require robust fire separation. Despite its physical loss, the Crystal Palace remains one of the most influential structures in modern architectural history. It proved the viability of using prefabricated, mass-produced components for grand-scale structures. It was a direct precursor to the curtain wall system, the glass facade common on almost all modern skyscrapers. The principles of modularity and the use of iron and glass pioneered by Paxton were foundational to the development of the Chicago School and international style architecture, demonstrating that its vanished grandeur lived on through its influence on future construction. Following the fire, the site became an architectural void. Although there were numerous proposals to rebuild the palace, none ever came to fruition due to the outbreak of WW2 and subsequent changes in planning policies. The site was used during the war for radar technology, and the remaining foundations were left as a memorial. The decision not to rebuild effectively banned the resurrection of the masterpiece, leaving the expansive grounds to be converted into a public park and, later, a sporting complex. The two massive, flanking water towers stood until 1941, when they were demolished for safety reasons, completely erasing the architectural footprint of the complex. The palace's cultural memory is powerful. It gave its name to the entire area of South London, including the famous Crystal Palace Football Club, founded in 1905, whose current stadium is located near the original site. The architectural ghost of the palace continues to define the geography and community of the area. The site itself is now known as Crystal Palace Park and features remnants of the original foundations and the famous dinosaur sculptures, which predate the fire, near the lower lake, a strange collection of architectural and historical artifacts surrounding the void left by the glass giant. Today, the site is marked by a modest architectural monument, a series of stone steps and terraces that formed the base of the massive structure. These elements are the only surviving visible parts of the original architectural planning from the relocation phase. Although the glass and iron are gone, the groundwork and foundations offer a tangible sense of the colossal scale of the lost structure. These remnants serve as a pilgrimage site for architectural historians who study the genesis of modern building techniques, providing a physical link to the vanished grandeur of the Victorian era. The story of the Crystal Palace is a unique parable in architectural history. It was born of speed and innovation, defined by transparency, and died in a spectacular blaze that symbolized the vulnerability of the industrial age. It teaches us that architecture, especially that which is technologically groundbreaking, is often fragile and transient. While the massive cathedrals and fortresses of stone endure, the pioneering structures of light and iron are sometimes quickly claimed by the very forces they were built to master. The palace was a stunning reminder that every architectural age has its unique and often fatal vulnerability.
The Crystal Palace was a dual masterpiece, first as the innovative prefabricated structure for the Great Exhibition in Hyde Park, and second as the Grandeur, relocated cultural center in Sydenham. Its destruction was swift, spectacular, and almost total, a catastrophic failure of fire safety in a structure dominated by open space and combustible materials. The fire effectively banned the continued physical existence of one of the 19th century's most important architectural influences. Its legacy, however, is woven into the DNA of modern building design, confirming that some architectural ideas are too powerful to be truly lost.
The true triumph of the Crystal Palace lies not in its enduring presence, but in the power of its blueprint. Joseph Paxton's simple, standardized, and modular system was revolutionary, freeing architecture from traditional constraints of time, material, and labor. The glass giant may have perished in a night of devastating fire, but its architectural philosophy, the principle of prefabrication and the use of lightweight industrial materials, survived and flourished across the globe,
defining the look of the 20th century. The physical palace vanished, but the architectural idea became immortal.
The loss of the Crystal Palace is a poignant reflection on technological progress. It was a structure that heralded a new, bright era of construction, but also exposed the new vulnerabilities associated with vast, open, iron-framed spaces. Its vanished grandeur serves as a powerful cautionary tale. Innovation is inherently fragile, and the buildings that push the boundaries of materials and scale often face the highest risks of dramatic, total, and irreversible destruction, leaving behind only the memory of their brilliance.
The Crystal Palace, a monument to light and industry reduced to molten rubble in a few hours, provides a vivid lesson in architectural transience. If you are fascinated by the story of this glass giant and its spectacular demise, be sure to subscribe to Vanished Grandeur and share your thoughts on whether the palace should have been rebuilt. Our next episode delves into ancient prescription and secrecy, the Great Pyramid of Cholula, Spanish forbidden and oblivion. We will investigate how a church was built atop the largest pyramid by volume in the world and why this Aztec masterpiece was effectively erased from sight and memory. Which pre-Columbian architectural mystery would you like us to explore next? Let us know in the comments.